So as I mentioned, today's topic for the summit is small business refinancing. So we're going to cover kind of what that is and go through the background. Go ahead, Yvonne. My name is Kelly Criswell. I'm the Executive Director of the South Plains Association of Governments, SPAG, and Caprock Business Finance. Don't care if you remember SPAG or Caprock, we're one and the same today. So we are all in one house and are here for the small business community. And then Chelsea Balti, she's presenting with me as well. She's the director of Caprock Business Finance Corporation and our Economic Development and Regional Services team. And so here's kind of what we're going to cover. I want to do some background on what refinancing means, why a small business might be considering refinancing a piece of their debt, how it could help, and some things to look for. We're going to cover what we've seen that lenders look for. And again, when this is all over and we've chatted, you snag one of these lenders in the room and ask like, hey, well, what about this? What would your bank look for? Because sometimes there might be some different things there. And then Chelsea's going to cover exactly how we can help and give you some examples of how our refinancing programs could work for your business. All right, go ahead. So let's start with what is debt refinancing, because it can mean a lot of different things. So we want, as we go through today, be thinking about your current business. Maybe you have no debt and you're just thinking, okay, what happens in the future if I buy a building and what do I need to be looking at? That's okay too. Maybe you have some debt on a commercial asset, so like land or a building, you own your own building. Maybe you have debt on equipment. Your business needs some equipment and you've been buying it either on credit cards or maybe using it from an actual vendor that supplies the equipment. You know, sometimes they'll have like financing options, things like that. So maybe you have a small or a large amount of debt that's related to equipment. Maybe you have a revolving line of credit that's kind of like for inventory and operations, so your bank already. It can really vary. So there can be a lot of different things that you originally took out debt for your business. If you bought the business from someone else, you might have owner finance debt. Anyway, that can look a lot of different ways. But when we talk about refinancing, we're basically looking at replacing existing business debt with a new loan that maybe better fits what your business needs today. So, for example, if you own a building and you closed on it, let me come up with a year because it's 2026. Let me say you closed on it 8 years ago, but you still owe quite a bit, or we're going to talk about balloons. Maybe you had a 10-year balloon on that. We're going to talk about what that means. And you're like, okay, that's coming up. What should I start thinking about? What could I look at? Then you might be in a position for refinancing because your needs 8 years ago made sense and you took out the debt. But maybe today you need a little more cash on a daily basis, or maybe your rate's about to change. You need to be thinking about kind of what all debt you have as we go through what we're talking about. Go ahead. Okay, so here's a few reasons why a business might consider refinancing. I'll say this, in my viewpoint, we kind of think about the need to refinance falling into 3 categories. Maybe you need some more cash flow, so you need to free up some cash. Stability, you just want to know what your payments are going to be, and maybe you've got a lot of different payments and you need them to one place every month. That would be more stable for you. And growth, maybe you're in a growth position and you need to take money out of something, or lock in kind of what you're paying on a monthly basis to be able to grow, or borrow additional funding to be able to grow. So there's a few different things here. Lowering your monthly payment, refinancing is not always going to do that, but it's usually what draws people into a refinance conversation. We're going to talk about things you need to consider to know whether or not a refinance would truly lower your monthly payment. But that would help cash flow, obviously. Replacing short-term debt. So I made the example of maybe you had to buy several different pieces of equipment and you took out from those vendors or suppliers their credit financing options, and those are probably really short-term things like 18 months, 24 months, things like that. So maybe you need a longer term and replace some of that. Preparing for a balloon payment. Okay, the lenders in the room, y'all can correct me because our programs don't do balloon payments, but a balloon payment is a really common financing tool. The way I always think about explaining it is, let's say that you got a loan to buy a building, and you got a loan to buy a building and your payments were set up like you were going to pay that out for 20 years. but the term was actually 10 years. That means at the end of 10 years, you've got a balloon. That's really common in some conventional financing, especially for larger things. And basically what that means is your payments were set up like it was over 20 years, but at the end of 10 years, you've either got to refinance that debt or you've got to pay that off, that balloon at the end. So there's probably a better way to explain that, but I like to simplify it. So in my kindergarten terms, that's a balloon payment. A balloon payment coming up, and we're going to talk specifically about that, is a great reason to be thinking about refinancing, because regardless, you're going to be refinancing with your bank. Now, if it's eligible, you might consider refinancing with a 504 and your bank. And so you've got some options there. Variable interest rates, and maybe you want a fixed interest rate. So if it qualifies, our programs, both through Caprock and SPAG, have fixed interest rates. So what we could do is, let's say you have 3 or 4 different loans for your operations, and they're all at different interest rates because you've taken them out over the last 3, 4, 5 years. And you want to get that all into one. We could refinance that where your bank takes a portion and we take a portion. You're still going to have an adjustable rate with your bank. That's common, but it's going to be on a new term. But our programs will fix the interest rate. So at least for a portion, 30 or to 40% of your debt will be at a fixed interest rate, meaning you'll know what those payments are month over month, year over year. So fixing your interest rate is often a big reason why people think about refinance. Consolidating business debt. So I gave the example earlier. Let's say, and we see it all the time. It's really common. You need to buy something, you finance it through that supplier. Now you have a revolving line of credit on top of that. And now you've put some things on a credit card and you have a building loan. So now you have 4, 5, 6 different streams of debt into your business. And maybe you want to consolidate that into 1 or 2. Consolidation of business debt is a big reason why you might be thinking about refinance. And my favorite is expansion or improvements. And so we have a specific SBA program that supports that. So let's just say you've been growing and you've been in your building 6 or 7 years and you're like, I'm going to have to take out and expand into the back parking lot here. That's great. That you could take that original commercial debt and do a refinance with expansion to actually add on to your property. Or maybe you just need to remodel the inside to make it fit your needs better. So you might not be adding square footage, but you might be expanding the actual operational footprint. There's a lot of different options there, but growth is a big reason why you might want to be thinking about refinance. Even if you left here today and you decide, okay, I don't really have a need to refinance any of my business debt, that's fine, because ideally you left here today at least mentally thinking about all of the different things that your business has, all the different streams of debt and financing that your business already has. And then you're thinking about it and now you have some more tools. Okay, go ahead. I really liked this graphic. So the biggest reason that people typically call us about refinancing is, my interest rate's too high, so I need to refinance it. Interest rate's important, what the rate is and whether it's fixed or variable, but really that's like this graphic, that's the tip of the iceberg. That's what you're thinking about, but there's a lot of different things below the surface that you also need to consider. So that's kind of what you notice first, and it does impact your payment, but that monthly payment, the loan term, those are 2 factors that you need to be considering as well. Closing cost and fees. If your debt is, 8, 9 months old, you just paid closing cost and fees. So is it the right time to refinance it already and add those? It might be, but that might be really soon, and stacking on more closing cost, may not be effective at that time. Prepayment penalties. So a lot of programs have this, whether that's conventional loan through your bank. Our SBA program has some prepayment penalties. That can be a factor, and you need to know what they are, and you need to know whether or not that's going to impact your consideration of a refi. Collateral requirements. So can you refinance things without jacking up your collateral, because maybe things are cross-collateralized, or you're going to need more collateral because you're putting everything together. You need to know what the collateral requirements are and what you have collateralized right now. So who has a lien on what in your business? Cash flow impact. So this is what we were talking about. If all of it is worth it on a monthly basis, you need to be able to do that calculation, and we're going to kind of talk about how to look at that. And then the total cost over time. So a lot of times we're thinking in short term, I need to free up cash now for XYZ, but there's still a long-term impact on your business. And so it's an important factor that you need to think about. Is this going to add? How much is it going to add in terms of time, in terms of interest paid? And is that, really beneficial long-term? All right, so here's some signs that you should be thinking about refinancing some of your business debt. We put them into the categories of red flag and opportunity. So red flag doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. It just means, hey, you need to look at this. So maybe your monthly payment on your outstanding business debt is limiting your cash flow. Sometimes that's because you're growing rapidly and, all of a sudden your cost of doing business is expanding because of your growth. But now your monthly payment is limiting your cash flow. And you don't want to get necessarily in a position where you're dumping everything onto credit cards because your cash flow is limited. You have a balloon payment coming due. You're going to hear me say that over and over again, because especially on commercial debt, that's a very common thing that leads someone to think about refinance. Your rate is variable and maybe it's recently increased. So we saw this a lot during the pandemic. People took out debt from any source, conventional debt, maybe a SBA 7A loan, all kinds of different things that had rates that could change over time. And like 5 years post-pandemic, so in the last 12 to 18 months, those rates shot up. So if you had a variable rate and you took out debt during that time period, you probably went in with a really low rate and your rate is jumping or has jumped recently. Again, not necessarily like something's wrong. It just means that rate was always going to change. And today interest rates are a lot higher. Here's some opportunity reasons that may be a sign to consider refinancing. You're managing several business debts. So again, not necessarily a good or a bad thing. It just happens over time. You have various streams of debt for your business. And maybe you want to get that down to like 2 payments. From 8 to 2 payments is an accounting simplification. It's probably going to save you in the long run. That's an opportunity to look at refinance. You need capital for improvements or equipment. Chelsea's going to talk about one of our programs that is actually a cash out refinance option that the SBA provides, where if you own your property, your business property, and you have enough equity in the building, if property values have gone up enough, you may be able to pull out some of the cash out of that business, out of that asset, and use it for operational needs or to buy a new piece of equipment, for example. And then your business or property value has improved. So those are some different reasons and opportunities that you might be thinking about refinancing. I would say too, if you're not, besides thinking about all the debt your business has when you leave here today, good idea to, and we're going to give you a list you can take, to either go back and look at your loan documents or send some of the questions we're going to have towards the end to your lender and find out about it, because you signed everything, and anybody that's ever closed on anything, you just sign your life away and you don't really remember all of those details. So you can ask things like, hey, do I have a balloon on this? And when is that due? And what is my rate? And how often does it change? And they can give you all that information. So we've got a little starter list there to be thinking about that as well. Sorry, go ahead. Oh, here it is. Yeah, that was a nice tee up. I couldn't remember the order. Sorry. So these are things that I would ask. The first 5, literally we can send these slides out if you signed in when you got here. Just take those first 5 and email them over to your bank or whoever you financed anything with your business and just get that information in an easy, summarized place to understand what you have. You may go no further than that. You may not need to refinance anything, but at least then you have a really simplified look at what you have. And then the last 2 are things that you can think about, you talk about with your lender also, but what is my collateral worth? So if it was property, you probably got an appraisal, but how many years has it been since you had that appraisal? LCAT is an option. If you're in Lubbock County, you can look that up. Those are usually lower than appraisal rates. Maybe you've done some improvements. Maybe that's not a great look, but it'll give you an idea, a ballpark, If it's equipment, so a lot of businesses need different equipment. you know what it costs new, but do you know what it's worth 2 years, 5 years, 7 years after you bought it? And if it's industry specific, you probably have a better idea of that than anything. But when you get into refinancing, if you're using that collateral, depending on the size and cost of that equipment, sometimes we'll even do like equipment appraisals to get a real handle on that. But you can usually see what you have a good idea of kind of what that collateral might be worth. And then keep in mind, collateral in your mind might be worth something, but lending has lending rates on collateral. So say something is a piece of equipment and it's worth $1,000. Well, we might only lend, 50% of that value based on that collateral. Does that make sense? So you need to think about what the lending, the loan to collateral kind of calculation is that your bank uses or that we might use, so that when you get into that. And then will a new loan actually improve my business position? Even though we do financing, and I would not put words in any of our lenders' mouth, but I bet they feel the same. Financing options for businesses are a tool. It doesn't mean you always need to go get and borrow more money. So there's a reason to look at that, and will that impact your business positively overall? If none of you ever call us back again to talk about a 504 refi, we're going to be okay because we gave you information to go and think about that. But hopefully it planted a seed when you do get to that point to consider that as an option. But will a new loan improve your business position? The answer is not always yes. Okay, go ahead. Okay, so here's kind of a little bit more of a detailed breakdown of improving cash flow. So refinance could help lower your monthly payments, like we said, which would free up cash for your operations on a monthly basis. So this example that we have here on this, let's just pretend this is just like one loan. They had one loan. Their debt service is $8,500 a month, but for whatever reason, because of maybe they're refining into a 504, whatever reason, their new payment would be $6,900 a month. So by refinancing, it's probably changing the term, changing the rate, all of those things. They've now created a monthly savings of $1,600 a month. That looks really good. Annualize that, that's almost $20,000 a year. That's a big deal. Now, if it costs you $16,000 in appraisal and fees and everything else, was that worth it to free up on a monthly basis? You really need to do that calculation. But let's say it was fairly cheap to get in and reducing that monthly obligation was a big help. Then you have additional cash flow on a monthly basis to support your payroll, your inventory, repairs that you needed to do, maybe marketing growth, whatever it is that your needs are on a monthly basis. So monthly cash flow is something really, really important to think about. If you're thinking this is kind of tight, it's a good idea to look at the debt that you have and see if refinancing can reduce that monthly cash flow obligation. Okay, I'm sorry I keep talking about balloons, but it's because we see it all the time as a big reason why somebody's thinking about refinancing. So I kind of explained this again, but I mean earlier, and I'll kind of go over it again, but a balloon in itself is going to create pressure if you wait too long to think about it. So a lot of businesses, we had a business that we were talking to, they took out their loan in 2018. It was a 10-year balloon. So 2028 feels like that's far away, but it's really not that far away. And so we provided a little schedule to at least be thinking about it. So again, when you go email your lender and say, do I have a balloon and when does it due? And they give you a date, then you can kind of use this back into the dates that you need to start considering your option. So at least 12 months before, you need to be talking to your lender. Hey, I had a balloon on this. What did it look like? When is that due? What are my refinance options with the bank? What do I need to be preparing for? What do I do? And they'll give you information and talk to you about that. And then 6 months before, you really need to be digging in on options. So do I want to do this as a 504? Would that be a lot more work? Would that be a lot more information? Do I qualify? What is my bank options going to look like? What else do I need to do? And then 3 months before, you really need to be finalizing that structure and preparing. So by the time you get to the due date of the balloon, you've already fixed it. So if you wait until, the month before your balloon was due, now you've put your bank under pressure pressure. And, maybe you had less control over rates. They could tell you if you started earlier, hey, rates are going up, or rates are stabilized, or rates are going down, whatever the need may be. Or these things change in your business and that's going to affect it. So we really need to look at that. Anyway, there's a lot of things to consider. So plan early and think about that. So leave today, and whatever debt you have, you just email your lender and say, do I have a balloon on that? And when is it due? And then put it in your calendar. So if you review refinancing options earlier, you have a little bit more time to consider other programs. So again, if you went to your lender a month before, maybe 504 refi was a great option for you, but now your balloons come due and now you're in a real tight crunch. And so everybody's under the gun to get that done. So don't wait till it's due to start that conversation. So debt consolidation, we talked about this a little bit before. So it's kind of, as I explained before, and we've got a little example to work through here. Let's say you just have a few different sources of debt, a couple different lines for whatever reason, and you want to get those down to a consolidated one payment. I'll tell you this, if you use Caprock or SPAG, we'll get you down to 2 payments, but nonetheless, that could still be better than 6 or 8. But let's use this example. So this person had an equipment loan that was costing them $2,200 a month, a business credit card where they were needing to pay about $1,100 a month, a short-term business loan that was $3,000 a month, for a total of $6,300 a month in their debt that they had for their business. Now, if they consolidated them, refinance them all together in a new note, those payments would go down to $4,900 a month, which saved them $1,400 a month. And that's a big deal, because now this new structure, first of all, it's just easier to pay 1 or 2 places than to pay 8 places, and remember that every month. But also it may be fixed and got everything into one interest rate or a different term, which can be really, really helpful. In our example, and Chelsea's going to go through that, if you refinanced or consolidated things into one of our SBA programs or our SPAG programs, you're still going to end up with a payment to the bank, because all of our programs work with our local lenders, but then you're also going to have a payment to us. So maybe you had 4 or 5 different lines of credit, or different lines of debt for your business, but we can consolidate all of that, get it on a new term and rate, and get you with 1 payment to the bank and 1 payment to SPAG. So that would still improve the position quite a bit. Okay, so this is kind of a short list of things that we put together that when you go talk to your bank, and honestly, we're talking about refi today, but if you are just thinking about, hey, I need to talk to a bank about preparing myself because I'm going to need to borrow money to buy a building, or I'm going to need to borrow money for equipment, or whatever the need is, these are just a starter list of things that your lenders are probably going to be looking for. So they're going to want a debt schedule. So this is why I said leave here today and go figure out what all you owe and how much it is, and all of those questions that we went over. They're going to want to know what kind of collateral you have, first of all, and the value to it. In COVID, we did some uncollateralized loans. It's rare. So just assume that you're going to need some collateral. Those are gone for us, but you're going to need to know, what can you put up against it? The use of funds. What do you want to do? Are you just consolidating debt? Do you need to do some remodeling? Do you have a big equipment purchase? What do you want to do? And what's the benefit to the business? Whatever it is, whether you're just taking out a loan or refinancing debt. They're going to ask for some financials, tax returns, personal financial statements, interim financial statements. I say this to say all the things your lenders want, we want too, so that's real easy. Credit history. So our next summit is about your personal credit and different things that you can do to build that back up and how that impacts your business. But they're going to want to know, did you have a big medical issue and your credit's a little bit low? Are you kind of extended, or did you get behind on some payments and that's low? Give us some explanation for what your credit is and why it's where it is. Payment history. So especially if you're talking about refinancing or consolidating debt, you're going to need to show that you've been making regular payments on time. And then business cash flow. So then they're going to do an analysis, and we would do the same thing of, okay, what does the cash flow look like now? What's coming into the business? Then all of their expenses, how does that look? And how does this potential loan or refinance change their position for business cash flow? flow. So these are all things that you're going to talk about with your lender that we would talk about together if you're considering one of our programs. So just kind of be aware of that. Some of that you bring to the table, like your debt schedule, you're going to have to bring and provide that. But some of it, you're going to work through that with your bank, or we'll all work through it together, whatever that is. So go ahead. So this is kind of where I start transitioning to Chelsea, because I want Chelsea to go through specifically how we at SPAG and Caprock can help if you're in one of these positions. So I do want to be clear, and she's going to go over that too. All of our programs work even if you're not refinancing. We just chose refinancing right now because it's a good topic and it's important for people to be considering. But our programs are if you're just looking for funding or financing for a specific purpose, like a building or equipment and things like that. But we're going to go over what we can help with. We can run different scenarios alongside your bank to say, hey, if we structured it like this might help you, or we could throw this in there, or we could stack this, give some different options for you and your lender. We're going to identify the possible loan program options. Chelsea's going to go over ours today, but a lot of times what happens is once we really get in the weeds of what you have, then we can kind of decide which bucket is best for it to come out of. Coordinating with your lender. So we work side by side with all of the lenders in the room today, working on those things. We'll package loan request, whether that's for the Caprock side and SBA or on our SPAG side. And we're going to help you kind of understand what is involved and what those next steps are, and then connect you with different resources. So I called out our lenders, but also, let's see who all is in here, but we've got the SBDC. You guys raise your hands. Come on. If you didn't notice, or it's your first time in our building, the Small Business Development Center is in our house now. And so their door is right out here. And that's a resource that we can connect you with. Even if you're an existing business, they have resources for you. It's worth the time to set up an appointment and go visit with them and find out, hey, am I on the right track? I'm thinking about adding this part to my business. What's that going to look like? They can run all kinds of stuff together, help you put together projections, business plans if you're just starting up. Their list of resources kind of run long, and they always participate in kind of what we do in planning, but that's a resource we can connect you with. Or if you've been thinking about something like this and you're like, well, I just don't really have a bank set up, I haven't had to do that before, and I'm not taking out debt in my business, then, well, you've got some in the room today, but we can always, share with you contacts for different people. If you're like, I bank at X bank, I just don't know who to call, then we can tell you kind of who to call and where to go there. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chelsea, and she's going to talk a little bit about our program specifically and how they can participate.
Thank you, Kelly. So SPAG and Caprock, I'm going to explain the difference. You do not have to remember that when you leave the room today, but I'll give you a little background. So SPAG is broader than lending. It's the South Plains Association of Governments. It supports regional planning, community development, and most importantly, in lieu of this or in connection with this, economic development. Caprock, on the other hand, is actually housed within SPAG. It's a certified development company that supports small businesses through financing with the SBA 504 loan program. The big takeaway from this is that the local connection between these two entities really matters because our team understands the region, local lenders, and your small business needs. We have a pretty good grasp on that since we work with folks with small businesses regularly. So this is a snapshot of our services. What you'll notice in this slide is that we actually guide the process from the first review of loan eligibility through approval, closing, funding, and even servicing. So you are going to talk to the same folks from start to finish, years on end. It's nice. You'll have a face and a name and a direct contact. Something I do want to highlight is that packaging is a little more than collecting paperwork. It is the same paperwork that your lender will have, but keep in mind we're utilizing that to really tell your story clearly and explain your needs clearly so that it can be reviewed and approved. So quick question. I kind of want to understand, especially small business owners here, what feels the most overwhelming in this process? Shout it out. Anybody? Or is it not overwhelming? You guys pros? You got pros in the room? Okay, I feel like most people tell us that the front end is the most overwhelming, the packaging part. But the beauty of it is we're going to guide you through that entire process. We have a checklist. Again, it's similar to what your lender is going to ask for. Pretty straightforward. And if there's anything that we have questions on, we'll follow up with you and then clarify that in the SBA terms so that they understand what you're needing. So think of these options listed on the screen as like a financing toolbox. Not every tool fits every project. Keep that in mind. The right option is really going to depend on several factors. So business stage, location, use of funds, your collateral, Kelly highlighted that several times, repayment ability, and then of course your project structure. What we see on our end most of the time is small business owners know the problem that they're trying to solve, but not really the program that can solve that problem. And so that's where we come in. We can help connect you with the right program and the right options. I want to highlight too that even if we don't have a solution within our own toolbox here at SPAG, we have numerous lender partnerships, other partnerships. Kelly talked about the SBDC that's housed in our building that we can actually refer you to for your needs and general small business resources. Oh, there's Kelly. So when SBA 504 may help. So it's one tool, right? And it's really especially used for long-term fixed assets. So it's usually for like an owner-occupied commercial real estate, major fixed assets. You can see the list on the screen, of course, but it's usually paired with a lender and borrower injection in the CDC, which is kind of where we come in. So this is a really good option for maybe a small business owner who's outgrowing a space, like Kelly highlighted. You want to expand your building, or maybe you want to purchase the space that you're leasing. Perfect fit for this program. And then on the next slide, we've got a more detailed list of eligible use of funds because folks always come in and like, what is even eligible? What can I roll into a 504 loan? The type of expense really helps determine the type of financing that you need. So for 504, you're really going to see a lot of purchase of building, land, renovating a space, long-term equipment. The first three listed here are really the main ones that we see, but there's a comprehensive list of what it can be used for. And I think folks forget that 504 can be a debt refinance tool. So this next slide is a breakdown of the structure. So keep in mind, and Kelly highlighted this as well, but the structure works alongside a third-party lender or bank, not instead of a bank. So keep that in mind. This 50-40-10 structure is the most common example. The injection for a borrower may change depending on the circumstances, but 50% is your third-party lender, 40% is covered by the SBA 504 loan, and then 10% is the borrower injection. An instance where that may go up to 15% is if it's a new business. At that point, they will ask for an additional injection. So what is 504 debt refinance? Again, most folks don't realize that you can use 504 to refi. It's more specific than general financing. Keep that in mind. General financing asks whether the structure helps the business, right? Just go in, refinance, save some funds. 504 refinance asks a few more questions, whether the debt and project really meet the SBA rules in general. There's really two types of 504 debt refinance. There are projects, you see that at the bottom, where there is expansion. So it's included as part of a larger growth of a project, or it can be without expansion even. So you're just refinancing current debt with no new project costs. So just existing debt flat out. So this is a really good eligibility checklist to start with. It's not the full checklist, but it's a good place to start. Kind of a first look. You want to look at the age of your debt. Is it 6 months or older? Payment history. Has your debt been current for the last 12 months or the life of the loan, whichever is less? Eligible use. At least 75% of the debt has to be used for an eligible fixed asset. Rest has to be for the benefit of the business. Of course, you can't just refi and add extra things in. Substantial benefit. Most of the time you will see a pretty big benefit, especially the balloon, right? You're going to see savings if you're refining a balloon debt. Again, they're almost automatically going to meet, is there a substantial benefit to refining through 504? So these are the big things to consider at first if you're looking into it. And then here's kind of a breakdown a little more in depth on with expansion and without expansion. So again, 504 refinance, the main question is it existing debt or is there a larger growth with your project? Is your project expanding your business, right? So expansion includes new eligible project costs. You may have renovations you're going to do, improvements, construction, has to show some measurable growth, needs to meet the SBA occupancy rule, just some basics that they look at. Without expansion, no new costs. We kind of talked about that. Your business has to have been in operation for a minimum of 2 years without expansion to be considered. Loan to value rate, 90% of the appraised value at least. And then cash out could be an eligibility with this program, without expansion. And so that's kind of where Kelly alluded to, sometimes you have enough equity where you may not need to actually inject cash, or you can pull cash out whenever you refi. And then, of course, it can't exceed, when you do cash out, 20% of the collateral value securing the qualified debt. So we can walk you through those. I know that sounds complicated, but it's not as bad as it sounds. So when to consider a 504 debt refinance. So you may be wondering, is this even an option I should look at? This is kind of a good list of things to think about and ask yourself whenever you're looking at if you want to step into the 504 debt refinance. So, do you own and occupy your commercial property? Do you want to? Is your debt tied to real estate or fixed assets? Balloon payment coming up. We talked about that. Do you want long-term fixed rate financing? The answer is probably yes. And that's a little easier to handle and kind of frees up some cash flow. Next one, improve monthly cash flow. Are you wanting to expand? Do you need to grow? And is your debt seasoned and current? The beauty of this is you don't have to know if you're eligible or not. We can help you determine that. That's not something that you have to do. So if you even meet 2 of these, you're welcome to come by, call us, email us and say, hey, I think this might be something I want to consider. Am I eligible? And we can let you know pretty quickly. So we recognize pretty quickly that not every business need is a building or equipment purchase, right? Not everybody's like, I need to buy a new building, or I need to build a building from the ground up. And so we created some of our own internal programs to actually help with those other needs. So CORE, for example, is for existing small businesses in eligible regions. You'll see that the main items for both of these loan programs are very similar. Loan amount that our portion is up to $250,000. It's built just like a 504 program with the third-party lender injection, or pay for it. Then the 40% of a SPAG program. These are technically SPAG, but again, you don't need to know the difference between SPAG and Caprock to get assistance from us, and then a borrower injection. But the bigger difference is the type of business. Is it existing? So that's more for the CORE program. And then startups fall more under the Lone Star program, and then the geography of where these are available. So the CORE program is actually specific to certain counties within our region and around our region. And then the Lone Star Fund is the entire state of Texas. So you could be anywhere, and that could actually be a funding source that you tap into. And again, these meet needs that are not specifically like a building or equipment. They are more for things like inventory, smaller equipment, looking at business acquisition, working capital, maybe not as physical type things that 504 would cover. Yeah.
In the Lone Star program, it used in for business acquisition, where say there's no level, it's enterprise value or a cash flow stream that's fine.
Typically, yeah.
We still have to have collateral.
Yep.
We have a little bit more flexibility on what that is. And then the strike side, typically a second lien, but we still have to have something. So it might be that it, somewhat unrelated to the business or whatever. Like we can get somewhat creative, or even like pledged assets, like a CD or something like that. We can do that. But we will have to have some.
Good question, though. No, that's fine. Something else I should probably highlight too is after this example, but I'll go ahead and tell you, these actually play very nicely with the 504 program. So if there are things that are ineligible through a 504 loan or refi situation that need to be taken into consideration, you can actually carve out that part of the project and utilize these programs to supplement that as well. And so that's a nice option there, so that everything can technically be financed or refinanced, but potentially 3 pots of money instead of 2, or 3 loans or notes. Looking at the project examples, this is a really good example of kind of what we typically see for Lone Star and Core. Again, you've got the 50-40-10 split for your total project cost. Right now on this one, we're looking at $176,000 approximately. Again, remember that cap on the SPAG portion is $250,000, so this fits nicely in there. And then for uses, leaseholder improvements, working capital, equipment. So those are all eligible under these programs. They really help fill the financing gap alongside the bank and the borrower injection. So it's a nice tool to have. And again, fixed rates, just like 504. Next slide, please, ma'am. There we go. So that kind of wraps up what we're touching on today. It was just a high overview, but if you have specific questions, we'll have time at the end as well and some other options. But for future workshop series, so our next individual workshop is August 7th. Kelly kind of talked about this. It's specific to credit repair. And then the full day workshop is October 1st, 2026. I believe we've got some coupons for that we're going to give out today if you attended, so you'll get a discounted rate. It is $20 to attend the October 1st workshop. The other credit repair workshop is at no cost. So keep that in mind. But yes, please utilize these if you want to go to the full day summit. It'll be a good time. We'll have resources. Looking like we'll probably have headshots again, which everybody loves. Numerous workshops over topics that small businesses need, and lunches included. So it should be a good time. And then what everybody loves, questions, but really thank you guys for coming out today. We appreciate it. And really the big takeaway is, we're a small business resource. So even if it's not specific to one of our programs, refinancing, what we've talked about today, we want to make sure that your needs are met. We can either assist you with one of our programs or connect you with someone who can, like our neighbors at the SBDC.